Hello and welcome to another edition of Tech Launch in the News. Let's get into it. Welcome to this edition of DevOps in the News. We're going to start right out with Taming the Wild West of DevOps. This is a really helpful article. There's a lot of good data in it. I highly recommend checking it out if you get a chance. One of the big things that these guys are talking about is generally how there's a lot of variability and splintering within the decision making, even within an internal organization around DevOps. So they start out by talking about how 90% of business leaders cite DevOps as a top strategic priority for their business. And one of the big challenges with DevOps in general is that a few organizations really have this down. Most of them do not. And so you can see only 12% describe their DevOps capabilities as mature with a centrally governed toolchain. And one of the things that you look at here whenever you kind of drill down into this is a lot of companies are migrating to using DevOps. So if you're not migrating to using DevOps and taking it very seriously, you're going to be left behind. Now, this is great for us in the DevOps field and being able to implement this effectively. But it really is a big challenge for a lot of companies. And even in the last several years, you've seen a lot of changes in this landscape to mature it even more. Ultimately, it's a lot of different parts of the organization who get to decide in many companies what tools they're using. And this causes a fundamental challenge with centralizing and standardizing DevOps. So whenever you have a lot of different parts of your organization splintered effectively around this DevOps set of tools, it can create challenges. Then you have the landscape that's constantly changing. So specifically, there's a lot of security, something referred to as DevSecOps. So development security ops, and bringing that into the picture, and performance, and some of the other aspects that a lot of companies have to comply with. You have SEO, you have WCAG, you have all kinds of different aspects that you have to respect and utilize within these automated testing and deployment processes. So anyway, one of the interesting things is essentially this kind of ambiguity with the tool set, lack of skills to be able to get up to speed with the different tools, and essentially a maturity issue within the industry effectively. Too many companies deal with this complexity by leaving decisions with the DevOps team, which increases agility. And you'll see in some of the later news articles that we kind of talk about this culture of agility, but it can also create a Wild West environment, decentralized with few standards. And at the limit and at scale, this creates problems. Standardizing decision-making processes and tools across teams helps businesses align their development practices with their strategic ambitions. It improves security, compliance, and manageability. Because of this, about 80% of companies say they'd like to re-centralize decision-making for DevOps. So if you're in DevOps and you're seeing that it's become more kind of independent, there's going to be a consistent trend toward really centralizing this a lot of driving kind of fundamentals behind this. And essentially here you can see a nice visual of this as well. Reasons to centralize: standardization, align tech, increase speed and agility, and improve security and privacy. And this security and privacy will most likely continue to move forward. Obviously, there are downsides to that too. Slows agility and strips engineers of input. That is the reality. So that's kind of something that most business leaders are going to have to toy with and optimize the configuration of this. Only 1 in 5 companies say they have the right tools and automation to scale DevOps. About 60% of companies say they plan to consolidate on DevOps platforms over the next 3 years. So across the enterprise or across their organization, standardization is key. Over the next three years, adoption of serverless technologies could rise from 33 to 55% of workloads, and containers adoption from 52 to 75% of workloads. So we talk about some of these technology platforms in our news, and we really want to keep you apprised that these are trends that are happening in real time. Definitely, if you're not familiar with them, we encourage you to get more familiar. If you are, take advantage of it. The serverless kind of architecture is going to continue as a trend. Only 23% of companies say they have strong norms in place that empower teams to make decisions and maintain accountability after deployment. Really interesting. So this is talking about change management. So only 23%. This, again, is kind of a maturity issue with DevOps and really taking it to the next level. So how do you really take advantage of this? Well, one of the biggest things you can do is look at these pain points and identify solutions and identify the reality is here that it's a social challenge as much as anything. And so how do you really incorporate these changes and get adoption within a group of people that have different competing interests, but as a group have a central goal that they're all working toward? So just to conclude here, while only 10% of companies have standardized around a single DevOps platform, another 60% say they're likely to do so over the next few years. So that is a massive, massive sea change for a lot of these companies. Now, obviously, most of them probably won't be successful given these numbers. And you can kind of continue to see that this splintering is just a physical challenge within DevOps. It's very complex, time consuming, etc. But the fact that these leaders are saying that is a really good signal to you on how to position in front of this trend. Okay, let's take a look at the next article. Okay, so this is a brief article that we just have a summary of here, but it's basically talking about how this developer experience survey reveals that DevOps practices fall short of the promise. Now, this is kind of looking at the other side of the coin that we just talked about. So this is talking about how developers who responded and DevOps team members say that fewer than 20% of respondents say their development team was able to choose its own tech stack. 44% said they are partly able to, 38% they are not able to at all. Flexibility around choice of tools is a central component of DevOps culture because it enables organizations to react more quickly to changing customer and business needs. So you're seeing a competing kind of clash of tectonic plates here with the need to centralize to be effective around security, change management, architecture changes that are happening in the industry, the need to centralize around a tech and pick one, versus DevOps and the desire for agility and independence, and that being a major challenge for culture. So this is a reality within DevOps in general. At the same time, less than half of engineers build, ship, own their code, or work on teams based on team topologies. So essentially, this is, again, a concept of looking at essentially having maturity within DevOps and figuring out where these lines need to be drawn so that we have a stable DevOps infrastructure within a company, within an organization. Over 70% of respondents track open support tickets as a measure of customer value. While this metric is easily accessible, it provides limited insight into developer impact. Measures like feature adoption, churn, ROI, or NPS are better. However, fewer than half of those surveyed actually use those metrics. So essentially, you have this feedback loop that ideally would be going back to the DevOps team and the development team members so they can see directly from customers in a kind of data, some form of visualization and data-centric way that isn't just a specific support ticket, but maybe there's more context. Maybe there's more information and subjective detail that they can get into, and they just aren't getting that as a norm. So you can see, again, this concept of developers and DevOps specialists wanting to get in and help with some of this decision making. So there's really an opportunity to kind of marry the two. The problem is that companies need to get better at building and shipping software. Businesses today depend on it, but basically DevOps maturity and adopting metrics clearly connected to business outcomes, that's going to give folks a distinct advantage. It is somewhat of a Wild West, but the way that you can address that is by identifying it, at least starting to identify the fact that that is kind of the standard. And because of the splintering within the field and this kind of culture of agility and a lot of different tech that's constantly changing, security, etc., you really have to get in front of it and be proactive in order to make it work. Okay, let's take a look at the next article. GitLab spots a huge opportunity for DevOps platform as a revenue source. So this is interesting because GitLab is essentially saying all companies will have to use DevOps. That's their essential statement here. And they're saying, we'll be waiting. We're going to have the best platform available for them. So we're focused on selling a business outcome and a time to value. Now think about that for a minute, The idea here is they're essentially saying and reinforcing what we just talked about, where basically a lot of DevOps is so splintered that the outcome kind of gets lost in all the noise. We get stuck in the thick of the thin, choosing the right DevOps tool, choosing this technology, this one specific issue and how we're going to deal with it. And then all of a sudden the end result that the customer needs, which is working software that's consistently working, that gets lost in all the noise. So GitLab is saying we are going to deliver the outcome and we're going to do it in a short time period. Platform is a comprehensive integrated solution. GitLab is pushing a platform as a comprehensive integrated solution that brings together all the relevant DevOps capabilities in one place. So again, this idea of going away from splintering. Most companies are still practicing do-it-yourself DevOps, juggling many different tools with homegrown integrations related to code development, deployment, and operations. These integrations take more and more effort over time, and it starts to look like digital duct tape. What a great analogy, digital duct tape. This is particularly important when trying to solve a fragmented security experience with DevSecOps. Could not agree more. So essentially, these guys go on to kind of talk about their objectives and some of the financial investments that they're making. But do you have digital duct tape in your DevOps? And this might be a helpful way to visualize it for a lot of folks. Ultimately, the bottom line is that a lot of businesses that are embracing DevOps, and you saw from the stats earlier that a lot really are, they're going to be looking for a comprehensive solution that's more opinionated and that's going to deliver an outcome within a certain timeline. So how can you position yourself in front of that? Think about that and answer that question if you can. And how can you position your business if you're operating just a general software business, or you're kind of looking at this and leveraging software? How can you position your business so that you have a single outcome in a short time to get there? Because that makes you more competitive than other folks in your space. Last piece that we wanted to wrap up on is just some data to kind of reinforce around the industry size. So this was an interesting study that basically says that the market size will be worth $14.9 billion in 2028 for global DevOps, with a 19.1% compound annual growth rate. Now, the other interesting thing about this article is they go on to briefly highlight how DevOps tools are aiding and strengthening development process, decreasing the chances of making errors, and they're gaining more popularity in the IT sector in particular. They support stability and security of software deployment process, and according to one of their lead analysts, containerization and platform as a service are some of the current market trends that are accelerating the DevOps market growth. I could not agree more. These services are simplifying the implementation and adoption of DevOps in various industries. And apart from those, there are increasing demand for pen testing of Internet of Things, client satisfaction, and high operational flexibility in the industry. So if you're not aware of some of the details of those, make sure that you bring yourself up to speed. We will, of course, continue to help aid you with that. And that concludes this video. So we will look forward to seeing you in the next edition of DevOps in the News. Thanks for watching this edition of Tech Launch in the News. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe so you can see more in the news resources. We also have complimentary masterclasses and other resources available to you on our website, www.gotechlaunch.com. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them in the comments section. And until next time, thanks for watching and bye for now.